So today we're going to talk about some cooking methods that have the ability to affect your memory, your cognitive performance, the ability for your brain to rebuild and repair, and can even really just magnify the whole aging process in general. And you're likely using quite a few of these cooking methods, and they're probably just gonna freak you out a little bit, and you're gonna be like, well, what am I supposed to eat? Everything I want to eat is gonna kill me, monkey boy. Tell me what I should eat. So don't let it freak you out in that manner. The reality is you're probably right. If we're not tackling a zebra and eating it in our yard, we're probably doing something wrong. But this video is going to be about helping you understand simple adjustments that you can make that really have the ability to improve your health and improve your brain function. So it's really going to depend on, well, how well do you really need to be? How much effort do you need to put into this? If you're finding yourself in a lot of scenarios where you're like, what is the name of that guy that played Batman? No, the other guy. No, the other guy, or you just can't remember conversations you had a few days ago, then you might need to be a little bit more serious about this. But the average person can just use this information of, oh wow, that's not as healthy as I thought it was, and I'm doing that all the time. I should probably make some adjustments. So in this video, we're going to be talking about Advanced Glycation End Products, or AGEs, and hopefully you've seen our video on food combinations that can destroy your brain. And if you haven't, we'll put a link in the description below so you can dig into that after this. You really want to understand how these things can affect your body and your brain, and I go over a lot of studies in that video and I dig into that a lot more. I'm not going to cover all of that here, but basically when we're looking at this glycation that can happen in the body, it's basically like just sugars attaching to proteins or fats and kind of stiffening everything up, stiffening our cells and our tissues and restricting their ability to function correctly. And in that video, I went through a lot of the studies and the science that helps us understand that for a lot of people, these advanced glycation end products are creating this rise in dementia and Alzheimer's and issues like that. Because we can view it kind of like just biological glue gooking up the brain and restricting it from functioning and even rebuilding and repairing correctly. So oops, we really don't want to do that. So we're going to look at some cooking methods to kind of switch around some things a little bit and reduce the level of AGEs that we're bringing into the body. Because for some types of foods that we eat, we're actually creating these AGEs when these foods combine in the body. But with some cooking methods, we're creating these AGEs into the food and then bringing those into the body. So the first cooking habit we want to think about is cooking with dry, high heat, and we want to switch that more for wet cooking. So we're talking about things like baking or broiling or grilling or frying or even air frying. All of these high dry heat methods, you start to see a browning or a discoloration or maybe even some charred edges. That's glycation that we're creating. That's creating this problem that we're bringing into the body. So we want to do more things like steaming or stewing or poaching, even pressure cooking. Now pressure cooking gets a little bit hotter, but you're keeping it in this moist environment that keeps that moisture there. There's other things we can do like braising. There's sous vide cooking and smart ovens like these Tuvala ovens that are out there that a lot of people are using. So these methods have the ability to cook more with moisture. When we're cooking with moisture, especially when we can use lower temperatures, we're reducing these AGEs. And somebody's going to say, oh man, I just got a new $3,000 grill that'll cook an entire cow at once and plays every Bon Jovi track ever made. But that doesn't mean that you can never grill foods. The body is made to remove these AGEs. The problem is that there can be problems in the body that restrict its ability to get rid of these AGEs, and when someone's bringing in way too much to keep up with, now we have a problem and we need to restrict some of these things and keep an eye on what we're doing. So some of these smart ovens can kind of like steam food and then end the cooking process with like a broil that might put like a little bit of a crust on there that still gives you more flavor, because this glycation is creating more flavor. Chefs will teach you, hey, cook this way to get this burn on there and it will taste better. And the reality is that it usually does. But some of these smart ovens, some of these other cooking methods can actually keep a lot of moisture and flavor in the food and can make that even better. This sous vide cooking kind of cooks things in a bag in water at a lower temperature, and when you're cooking at a lower temperature, maybe you even using a slow cooker type of thing in water, now you're avoiding these AGEs. Some people will have concerns about the microplastics in the sous vide type cooking, but if you get the higher quality bags, it's supposed to not create a whole lot of trouble. If I hear from enough people in the comments that want me to do a video that digs deeper into these wet cooking ways like this Tavala oven or the sous vide and such, I'll put that together, but just know that the wet cooking can really take these numbers down in a big way. But just to give you an idea here, we'll look at this study on advanced glycation end products in foods, and they have this chart there that has hundreds of different foods that shows you different ways of how it was prepared and the number of kilounits, they say. That's how they measure these AGEs that are in each food prepared in different ways. And just to give you an idea, I just pulled up this basic chart here. But when we look at chicken that was poached, that might have like 1,000 kilounits. But if it's grilled, it jumps up to 5,200. A steak, braised or stewed, might have 2,200. But broiled or fried could be up to 10,000. And when we're looking at keeping our AGEs in a reasonable range, we really want to shoot for like 12 to 15,000 per day. Some people suggest going lower than that if you're having a health problem that's caused by these AGEs. But you can see, you could blow the whole day just with a good steak on the grill. So we want to look at optimizing more wet cooking when we can, and that'll really bring those numbers down, especially when we're looking at proteins like this. Now, step number 2 could be to avoid all the pre-added sugars, like, like a sugary barbecue sauce or some type of glaze that you're going to put on this meat before you're cooking it. A lot of the problems with AGEs come from sugars combining to proteins or fats. And this happens a lot in the body, but when you're adding these sugars to foods before you cook them, you're really jacking up the numbers in a big way. So when we can avoid these sauces and glazes, that can be really important. Now, one step you could take is you could even steam, like ribs or something like that a little bit to get them cooked, and then finish them off on the grill and then put the barbecue sauce on afterwards. That way you're still getting a lot of those flavors that you're looking for, but you're bringing things way down. Now, the sugars in the sauce, they're still a problem. Putting sugars in your diet causes a lot of glycation, but you reduced it greatly by not cooking those sugars into the meat. Now, the third thing to think about is crisping vegetables. And we want to look at like browning, especially when we're looking at starches. A potato steamed is not that bad, but once you cook it up like hash browns and it gets all brown like that, and you can even see the glycation on the food, you're really raising the AGEs in a really big way. So don't view it like it's just animal protein that's being cooked at high heat that's creating trouble. A lot of vegetables can create trouble too. And one of the biggest mistakes I was making was sauteing things in butter. I don't like to saute in oils that have a lot of polyunsaturated fats because they oxidize and create a lot of trouble. So I was cooking a lot of things in butter. I like to cook in saturated fats. But because of the milk proteins in the butter, when they hit high heat like that, it can really raise the AGEs in a really big way. So we might want to cook, if we're sauteing, ghee or tallow can be a lot better. But you can also just steam the vegetables and then put butter on the vegetables after they've cooked. That way you're not getting that butter at such a high temperature, then it's going to magnify these AGEs. Now keep in mind that I'm not a doctor. I'm not giving any medical advice. If somebody's doctor told them to cook a specific way, I'm basically a professional stand-up comic turned nutrition author, because when I lost my voice for 8 years and 23 different doctors couldn't figure that out, I had to dig for my own answers. And now for 20 years, I've been teaching health professionals how to help their clients fix the actual underlying causes of health problems instead of just covering up the symptoms. But with these studies, I'll put these links in the description below so you can check it out. It's okay if I'm standing in front of these. We'll just make them big when we need to see them, but you can go through those and that'll help you understand the right questions to ask your doctor. Because the main thing we want to understand is, like, somebody might be doing some specific diet to fix a problem, like a low carb or a keto or even a carnivore diet. All those diets have the ability to fix some health issues significantly. That doesn't mean that those diets are right for everybody. They're really not. I've talked about that in a lot of videos. But if somebody is moving to a carnivore to remove a lot of these processed junk or even carbohydrates that they're having problems with or fibers they're having trouble with, but they're grilling all this meat that they're having, well, they're creating a different problem. They might be improving one aspect, but they could be creating more trouble down the road. So we really want to understand these things so that we can use these specific diets in our favor. Now let's look at some tricks that we can do to maybe get away with more of this high heat cooking. The first one is using acidic marinades. We'll look at this study on heat-induced formations of advanced glycation end products, and they basically found that when you marinated a meat in some type of acidic marinade for about an hour before you cooked it, it could cut the AGEs like in half. So just some type of marinade with like vinegar or lemon juice, where you're kind of using a 1-to-1 ratio, or maybe it's like 1 part vinegar and 1 part, either water or oil or whatever else that you're marinating in, that has the ability to really cut down those AGEs. Another step that can be helpful is to be cooking with spices, and we'll look at this study here on inhibition of advanced glycation end products formation with spices, and they found that one of the biggest combinations that was most effective was cooking with pepper and turmeric together. And that seemed to be very effective, but also things like cloves, allspice, thyme, oregano, cinnamon, star anise. All of these things have the ability to reduce those AGEs. So especially if you can put some of these in one of these, marinades, now you're really doing double duty. So there's steps we can take to kind of reduce here. The last thing I'll say is this liquid shield thing, and we'll take this back up to this braising. So if somebody really wants to sear a steak to get some more flavor in there, you could sear it at first, but then put liquid in the pot to cook it for the rest of the way and braise it the rest of the way. So yes, you form some AGEs at the beginning, but by using the liquid heat for the rest of the process, you're really cutting down that total number a lot. So you can see most of us are not going to need to do everything right. If we can reduce the amount of sugars that we're putting into our diet, or sugars that are in our body. If someone's a type 2 diabetic or insulin resistant and their blood sugar is really high, well, they're just like a glycation factory. They might need to put more things in their favor. But for most individuals, we don't have to do every single thing right. We just need to do enough right to get the results that we want. But if you are having concerns about dementia or cognitive function, then that other video goes into a lot more of the science, explaining how these issues are creating troubles for our brain. So you can jump over right now and check out that video on food combinations that can destroy your brain, or you can check out our video on dementia starts in the gut that goes over digestive issues that can create trouble for our brain. I can't wait to hear about your results.